So that's a good. No, we have to ask. So that just be aware if you're going to make a joke that it's going to be recorded and kept forever. So yeah, exactly. Make it count, as we say. Franziska Schwartz is here. Olga. Oh, we have names we haven't seen for a while.
Yeah.
Kreshimir, your topic is quite interesting.
Who is Zoom Geniality?
Zoom Geniality, I don't know. Actually, we have a rule that people put their own name, so we know, but we don't really fight it.
We have also Sadia.
Yeah, Sadia also decided to come to join. Anything about the history of the origami in Japan is interesting for him. So Kreshimir, did you cut your hair?
Yes.
Yeah, nice.
For this, but it looks okay.
Yeah, it does. So who is Zoom Geniality? We are interested. Oh, Maria is very quiet today. She's just shaking hands.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, now she speaks.
Hi, Maria. How are you?
Hello.
Good to see you.
I'm glad Goran is here because I might have some language issues. So
okay, sure. Thank you.
So it would be nice
like
if you can.
Japanese words?
I won't. No, I have no problem with Japanese words because no one will expect me to pronounce them correctly. I will have a problem with remembering English words.
Then, if Goran wasn't here, most of us do not speak English as a native language.
So it would be fine if I just say it on Croatian. I think that maybe Maria would be the first, the next in line to possibly help.
We'll see. Yeah, is Dasha here?
Dasha is here?
Yet.
How come?
No.
Hello. I just came to listen.
Oh, she's.
But she gave you. Okay, never mind.
Hello.
Hello.
I can disappear.
No need.
No way. Please stay.
No, I was so stressed because I took my mother to the hospital today. So the operation was 5 minutes and the waiting was all in all like 7 hours.
Oh.
And he told her after the operation that in 30 minutes he will come and release her, and it took him 2 hours. And usually coming all the way from Tel Aviv to Binyamina in the evening is like at least 90 minutes. But then it took like an hour. So I was afraid I won't be home. I won't be home at the time. But all is well.
Ilan messaged me that he might not be on time, and I messaged him that we might have a storm in Zagreb in a few hours, so I might lose the electricity during the presentation. And then I messaged all of that to Dasha, and her reply was, okay, perfect, because I'm having problems with my vaccination, so I'm feeling blue. Everything is going right today.
But all in all, there's no electricity problems.
So far.
I'm at home, and even Dasha is here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we wait 2 more minutes and we start like we usually do. So you can chat, whatever.
No joke.
Oh, Jens is back. Yeah. Hi, Dirk.
Okay.
Hi, Jens.
Hi.
Hi,
Hey. And Joan Salas also.
Yeah.
Hola, Joan.
Hola, ¿cómo andamos?
Muy bien, ¿y tú?
And disculpa, I'm sorry, I'm not very frequently in this meeting. Because
It's okay.
of
You
the
don't
work,
have to be sorry.
but I'm very happy to be here today.
Oh, we have 20 people.
What?
Yeah. And 3 out of them are from Israel. And nice.
But why is it? It's so interesting, this theme in Israel?
It's
Is
because
there
I don't know.
any reason?
we have so much free time.
We have so much free time. Exactly.
Okay. But
So
now
for
you can go out on the streets and have some fun outside.
I want to welcome Matthew Hayward. This is your first time with us?
Second time,
Second time?
Yeah.
Okay.
yes.
So I missed the first one. Anyway, that's perfect that you are with us. We are very happy. And
Yes,
also,
yeah.
Olga Shukarevsky. I don't know how to read it.
Shukarevsky.
So you are welcome as well, although we don't have a video and we don't have a sound from you. But still, we are glad to have you with us. And just to make sure again, all the newcomers, we are going to record this because Kreshimir allow us, and so many people wanted to attend, but this is the 4th of July, and so they couldn't come. So we'll release the video later. Hi, Omer, and it's now 9:05, and Kreshimir will be spotlighted, and then I will allow him to share his screen, and you can start.
Share screen.
You look like the devil.
Okay.
Oh.
So the first thing I should mention is the title of the presentation. When Ilan asked me what's the title, I panicked and said History of Origami in Japan. But then I remembered that the presentation is actually already has a name. It's Origami in Edo period. And it was made in 2019 for another group who asked me to give a lecture about origami. And I decided to make this presentation. And it should be called origami in Edo period because there is no origami before that. I will go through the before that, but any origami is really starting in Edo period. Also, I should mention that I didn't make this for this. I went through this and changed it a little bit for this today. But originally, when we started talking about this presentation, it was going to be just to present what I already have. So yeah, that's why it's maybe a little bit not as professionally done as it should be. So before, I don't know if you can see this here. I don't know how to remove this.
To remove what?
You don't see this?
We see China.
Okay, then.
We see China in a black screen and number 1 on the bottom left.
Okay, good. So and the first thing we should talk about is that theory I come across, or we all come across often in many books, and it is said that origami was originally developed in China, approximately at the time when paper was discovered. So that would be around first century or even before, because we have archaeological evidence of 2nd century BC for paper. But my problem with this theory is the lack of evidence. So the Chinese characters here are China, and here is zhi, wait, zhi, zhi. This is folding, and this is paper on Chinese. So the three, in my opinion, best arguments for origami, or the Chinese version 知识, to originate in China are these three. So the first one is Tu Fu, who was the famous Chinese poet of the 8th century. And Tu Fu wrote enormous amount of poems, and are all, or I believe most of them are preserved. But in one of them, he might mention paper folding. I'm not sure that he does, because this paper folding is mentioned only in one translation into English. But let's presume that this, and by the way, I tried to find the poem on Chinese, but I couldn't find it, so this is still maybe pending. But let's presume that this translation is correct. He says, and this is in the poem, the poet says to his wife, take a piece of paper and fold it so that we can play a board of a game of Go. That means that she would take a piece of paper, she would zigzag it vertically and zigzag it horizontally to make a sort of checkers board, on which they would, and then she would go with a brush to mark the lines, and then this checkers board kind of sort of would be the basis for their playing the game of Go. If you want to, consider that an origami. I am not convinced, but let's say it is. I still haven't found the original poem where it is mentioned. But even if it is it really a fold origami? Is it like art? The second and most problematic argument is the trouble wit. The trouble wit is something that was used mostly by magicians, and it is extensively written about by Houdini in 1922. It is a piece of paper which is zigzagged in one, vertically or horizontally, whichever, I don't really know. And then it has these corner indentations with which you can reshape this model into various forms as they are presented here. For example, a bow tie, a fan, a bird bath, and so on and so on. The problem with it is that it is first mentioned in Europe in 1676, and I can't find the Chinese source that mentions it even later than 17th century Europe. So it might be just that it was found in Europe or developed in Europe or anywhere else, but it was named Chinese because China seemed, or sort of was, very oriental or very exotic. Can you see this window here? Or is this just mine?
All right.
It's only you. We see it.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, I will then move it from time to time. So to me, the best argument for Chinese are these. This is The first two characters are 之前 and 之人. 之前 is paper money and 之人 is paper dolls. It is part of the Chinese funeral rites when they are burning paper things for as part of the funeral ceremony. Originally, fun fact, they would be burning the real things. So the real money, the real people, the real things from in the house and so on. Most of these, like 90% or 99% of the things they are burning is made from paper, not folded from paper. But there are a few things, and I think these presented on the pictures are called the golden nuggets. They are actually folded from square. But it is also very, very flimsy argument for origami to originate in China. I didn't put it on the presentation, but the first book that I could find written about Chinese origami is from 1946 or 48, and it was printed in America. So it was written by a Chinese woman, but printed in America. It's like kind of problematic. Through the presentation, I will go through many examples of Japanese origami in their prints and paintings. China also has paintings. China also has a lot of visual representation, but nowhere is it found any kind of paper folded object, something that would resemble paper folded, or I couldn't find it. I would love to find it. I would love to, see that, but so far, except the funeral rites, and it's very limited, I can't find any other argument for origami to come from China. Wait. So the word origami, these white ones are the Chinese characters. This is Japanese hiragana. This is on Japanese oru. This is on Japanese kami. On Chinese, this is zhi, and on Chinese, this is zhi. They are combined from two characters, both. This first part, this is to fold, and this first part is originally written like this, and it represents a hand. This part means an axe, but it doesn't mean to hold an axe, to fold. It means something to do with a hand that sounds like saying an axe. So I think that axe is jin. So it would be a hand that sounds like jin, and that would be zhi, to fold. This is the original way to write this character, and this part here means to practice. It's combined from this sign, which is U, and it means feathers, a wing of a bird, wings of a bird, and this is color white, so white feathers means to practice, and something to practice with a hand is to fold. In Japanese, when you say oru, you want to, the way to, they have a change of sound, and instead of oru, they want to say ori, so they need this character to explain that it is ori. And kami in front of E becomes gami. So together it is origami. This gami on Chinese is combined from a character for silk and this character, which means family or a clan, but is pronounced shi, which sounds like zhi. I don't know the Chinese logic for that, but let's move on. It is zhi for paper. It is something to do with, it is something that looks like silk. Should I stop for questions? No, moving on.
Kreshimir, I
yes.
have the poem of Tufu. If you want, I can send you now in the screen.
Do you have it on Chinese?
The original Chinese, yes.
Oh, okay. Can you, okay,
Yeah.
send it somewhere, but I'm not gonna go now into that. But please send it to me. So now, these are word origami in Japanese is mentioned very, very early. I did not find the exact reference, but I think it's mentioned even in Heian period. And that begins, I think, in already 8th century. So, however, origami did not mean to fold paper. Origami originally meant folded paper, and it didn't mean folded paper into a figurine or something figurative or anything representational. It meant folded paper as in you would fold a letter, or it's just a folded paper, nothing else. That's origami. However, that word origami meant something. It was not any, it was kind of any folded paper, but it was a specific folded paper as well. So this specific one folded paper meant it wasn't a receipt, but it kind of, it's like a proof that you went through a certain course of something. There is a word for that. Okay. Something. But my point in dwelling on this is the fact that the etymological logic, the logic of etymology in the word origami is the same as the etymological logic of the word diploma. Because in Greek, diploma comes from double folded. And diploma, original diplomas were twice folded. Like it wasn't one paper which was made double, so diplos.
It's on. I can shut it off if you want, I guess. Hold on. Hold on. Okay.
Okay. I don't think that was a question. I hope not. I didn't. Okay. Anyway, so in Japan, before origami becoming the word for origami as we know it, or Chinese zhezhe, they used several other words: orikatachi, taramikani, orisue, origata, orimon. Of those, orisue and origata I found the most. Orikatachi, I can't find anyone who can explain to me what it means. Anyway, that's about the word. And we are at the very, very beginning of anything. So this is Heian period, or maybe even before Heian period. This here is very, very old. It is. It comes from the beginning of the Shinto religion. it is called Shimenawa. Shimenawa is basically this cord or this something. In the Shinto religion, it is the border between, I think the word is profane or just common space and the holy space. So beyond this line, beyond this cord, the space is specific or holy or sacred. In mythology, this is the cord that was used by a god of something. So in mythology, the goddess of the sun got angry at someone or something and went into a cave, and she didn't want to get out. So the gods decided to lure her out, and I think they did it with a song or music or something, and she came out to listen to that music. And I'm really didn't prepare this, so I'm trying to remember it. I think this is the story. So as she came out to listen to the music, one of the gods put the Shimenawa cord in front of the entrance to the cave, so she couldn't go back into the cave, and she stayed outside, and that's why we still have sun during like the day. Okay, and this here coming off, I don't know the name of this. I have no idea what this is. But this paper thing coming off the Shimenawa is shide. And although when making it, it is cut, although the folds are like basic and barely folds, I would consider this the first representational origami, because this here represents lightning. It is like changing the meaning of paper. It's not just paper, it's not just decorative meaning, it has a meaning, it is something. But like it is really in the area of proto-origami, like not really. So this is used in the Shinto shrines to denote that this is now sacred space. This is the same thing. This is shide. These parts are shide, and I think they are cut in the same way as this, only longer. And when they are in this form here, when they are in this form, they are called onusa. This object is used by the Shinto priests. I don't think they're called shaman. I think they are called priests. So in Shinto religion, this is used for purification rituals, and that's all I know about it. And we're gonna, this is a photo I took on my trip to Japan. This is from, I think, from Tokyo, from the perivoi in front of the Meiji Temple in Tokyo. And you can see it here, and I have another photo, this. This is very, very thin Shimenawa, and this is the shide from the Shimenawa, and that's it. This here is me when I was fat in Japan, or not really. So this is not only the sumo wrestler, not any sumo wrestler. This is the best of the best. This is the champion of the champions. And he is wearing this. This looks like Shimenawa, but when it is worn by a sumo champion, it is called yokozuna. And again, shide is used in this case as well. The reasons for that would need to be researched from the beginning. This is the a kind of ending of Heian period. Heian period is from the end of 8th century to, I think, 10 or 1180. And this is the Seishonagon. And Seishonagon was the lady of the imperial court. She was the, I think, maybe the first lady of the empress. And she wrote a book. And best I can say about it is it's a book. It's not really a novel. It's a collection of short stories. And the book is called The Pillow Book. And the name really says it all. It's not really a book. It's kind of a notebook. It's a pillow book, meaning it's a notebook you keep by your bedside to write in the thoughts before you go to bed, you have before going to sleep. And that's it really. So she wrote her thoughts before bedtime, but they are so magnificently, phenomenally well written that people of her contemporaries started transcribing them. Is that a word? When you started copying her manuscript. And I mean, it's way before printing. It's the book was written in 1001 or 1010. So it's way before printing, even in Japan. And people would just copy her manuscript of these stories. Why it is important for origami is, first, in one of her stories, she says how she started writing her pillow book. She explains that an emperor received some high nobleman, who, this nobleman, coming to see the emperor, brought him a present, and he brought him a stack of paper. It's kind of like you coming to see an emperor of Japan and bringing him a notebook. Or like it was something super hugely important, something very valuable. It was a gift for an emperor. And the emperor didn't have any use for it, so he gave it to empress. The empress didn't have any use for it, and she gave it to Seishonagon, who decided to write her books before bed. And these are the stories of the court of the era. And things that she explained, one of the things that she mentions is the tradition or expectation for morning after letter. Now, morning after letter is the letter a woman gets from her lover after the nightly encounter, if you catch my drift. So these love letters would be folded into a love knot, a love knot. I don't really know how, what is a love knot, but the closest I think would be I lost it. Oh, here it is. I don't know if you can see this small screen here, but so this would be a love knot, or that's like my interpretation. Like this is the closest thing I got to something that would be conceivable in that period. There is a love knot. There are many love knots today in origami, but I think this might be the one. And the second thing from the same period is Lady Murasaki, Murasaki Shikibu. And she, as you can see with the dates, she is not only her contemporary, she is the lady on the same court. She is her rival on the court. And Lady Murasaki, the second one, wrote 2 books. And in the second book is, I think, the diary of Lady Murasaki. She complains about Seishonagon. But also, Lady Murasaki wrote a huge novel, and I think it might be the first novel in the world, The Tale of Genji. And this is a novel which is, I think, when printed today on English, it is 1,600 pages long. It's super long. I'm not going to go into details, but she also mentions, she doesn't say a love note, but she says Genji received a letter, and when he saw how this letter was folded, his heart started to beat. So it might be the love note mentioned by the Seishonagon. The other thing, then why these 2 women are important for us is they mention a paper a lot. Most of the paper is used for wrapping, as wrapper for gifts, or a letter wrapped in a paper or something like that. And almost like, for example, Lady Murasaki, on those 1,600 pages, she mentions a lot of paper, like hundreds of paper. Most of the novel is just writing letters. And every time she mentions paper, it's never just paper. On maybe few occasions, she just says paper, but literally few occasions of hundreds of times that she mentions paper. Every time she says an epithet with the paper, and that is typical for both women. Both Seishonagon and Murasaki say this was made from Chinese paper, or Korean paper, or paper made in these province in Japan, or blue paper, or on and on. They different ways, different epithets for paper. And these are interesting, and keep in mind, we're talking 10th and 11th century Japan, but it should be mentioned, I don't think there is any real origami there. I wouldn't really consider folding a noshi, and there's no noshi at that time. I mean, there might be noshi, but they never mention it. They talk a lot about wrapping small things, which would go into noshi area, but it isn't really, they never mention noshi. And this is noshi. So this character here means to iron, like when you iron clothes, or anyway. So this is something that was flattened, and this both together these 2 mean noshi. And it is kind of sort of placed in Heian period, but the first evidence is later. First evidence for noshi is far later. So this picture here is, in my opinion, the most typical way a noshi should be folded. It should be folded with 2 papers, and these 2 papers should be of different colors. Ideally, the first one, the outer one, should be white, the inner one should be red. Not 1 paper with 2 colors, but 2 papers. It would be good if you could have 1 paper smaller than the other, and if they're of the same size, you should put them so that you can see that it's 2 papers. So like slightly off of the center. And as they are folded, the noshi doesn't have usually, or typically, noshi doesn't have a system of locking. So it would unfold fairly quickly. That's why it's important to tie it up in a knot, and for that you use this string. And this string is not a string, it is a string made of paper. It's called mizuhiki. Interestingly enough, mizuhiki is also used in samurai helmet or samurai for knotting some things in a samurai. What do samurais wear? Shield? No. Oklop? No. What about on Croatian?
Armor.
Oh, thank you. That was. So the samurai armor has some things that need to be tied up at the end of, well, like putting it on, and that is usually, I'm told, done with mizuhiki. Today it's made with a piece of plastic. This yellow thing is just a piece of plastic. Originally, it should be a meat from this shell. This shell is, I think, abalone on English, but you recognize it on your own language. It's popular. It has more than 200 species, fun fact. And this meat of this snail, sea snail, would be stretched and dried, and then it would be wrapped in a noshi and like presented. Noshi is not a gift. It is given after you receive a gift. So if you give me a proper gift, like a book or anything, if you come to my house for something and you brought me a present, I would get the present, and I would, as a thank you for getting a present, you would get a piece of dried sea snail in a nicely wrapped in some expensive paper. That is very, very typical for Japanese tradition. And if you read the Tale of Genji and Pillow Book by Seisha Nagon, you will see why. I can't explain it, but you know, from 1,000 years of such mentality, it would perfectly explain why the noshi makes sense to them. Before going on, moving further, this is this is the first real mention of real origami, because noshi is still in the category of just wrapping something up. This here picture is of the still famous Japanese poet Ihara Saikaku. We're talking about 1600s, and Ihara Saikaku he lived 1642 to 1693, and in 1682 he wrote his first prose work. It's kind of sort of a novel, maybe. Before that, he wrote a lot of poetry and mostly haiku. In 1682, in his novel, The Life of an Amorous Man, in a strange tale, super strange, he mentions Orisue. And I recommend you to read the novel. On the first pages, and I'm talking maybe second or third page of the book, he tells the tale of a child, which is at the point of mentioning at the point when this is happening, he is 7 years old, and he says, or let's read it. At one time, so it was, the context is important. So the two maids of the household brought him back from either pissing or taking a shit in a garden. And then it is said that at one time he, the 7-year-old child, fashioned a pair of birds with folded paper and gave these to them, the women, the maids of the household, saying, "This is the image of birds making love." Again, it's a 7-year-old child. At another time, he made a pair of paper flowers attached to stems, and these he also gave to them, saying, "Behold, the twin trees of love." Again, 7-year-old child. This was based on a translation from 1964. I'm not sure if, I don't know, I don't speak Japanese, so I can't judge. This is the part in which these words are said. This is from this. If you read Japanese, you will find it, but I can't. 2 years before publishing A Life of Amorous Man, Ihara Saikaku, wrote several haikus and published a collection of haikus, in which, in one haiku, he says, "The butterflies in a beggar's dream would be folded paper." It is presumed that butterflies are ocho and mecho butterflies, which we will talk about soon. This here is the first, to my knowledge, first at all, ocho and mecho. These are the first folded origami designs ever. These three might be starting or might be finished, maybe. Ocho and mecho, and they are kept in the Metropolitan Museum. They are dated to the 3rd month of 1697. So, I mean, this is the first origami we have. And prior to this, so Ihara Saikaku was in 1680s writing about the ocho mecho. This is the first mention of this. So the let's go to the ocho mecho. These are the butterflies, and also this is the first representational origami. So before this first Japanese figurative shape, you had wrapping, you had certain boxes, you had various ways of folding letters. There were envelopes of sorts, and there are folded maps. None of these before, including nashi, I personally wouldn't consider really origami before these butterflies. These butterflies are part of the Japanese ceremonies. So in 1764, Ise Sadatake wrote a book of etiquette called Tsutsumi no Ki, and in it, in several chapters, he mentions how to fold and how to use ocho and mecho butterflies. Usually, these are part of Japanese ceremonies. Firstly, it is part of the Genpuku Shiki ceremony, and that is the Japanese coming of age ceremony. Genpuku, I don't know what it means on Japanese, but when you see it written on in kanji, the Chinese characters mean head and to wear. So it's like a ceremony after which you no longer wear your hair the way a child would wear it, but you can wear it in a style typical for an adult. I don't know at what time this happens, but let's say between 10 and 20 years of age. I'm guessing it's different in various regions. The second ceremony you would use Ocho and Mecho would be in the Shinzen Shiki. Shinzen Shiki is the wedding ceremony. And this is typically, so this is bottle. Let's go with a bottle. This is a bottle with sake. And this here drawing is kind of sort of a teapot, but in this teapot would be sake served. And this here, I have no idea what it is, and I would like someone to explain it to me, but this is sort of kind of like a handle, like a long handle at end of which is a teapot with a decorated ocho or mecho butterfly. The thing with ocho and mecho, one is macho, the one is male, and the other is female. And the way it was explained to me, very obviously, this is male and this is female. And in the wedding ceremony, the way it was explained to me, the teapot would hold the male butterfly, where would be decorated with a male butterfly, and a cup into which sake was poured would be decorated with a female butterfly. I mean, come on, it can't be more figurative than that. The other thing about ocho and mecho, and I think to me very important thing, and the reason why ocho and mecho are so much Japanese in character, there is a direct line from sake production to making ocho and mecho. Now, this here would be typically a jug of sake. Now, when you produce sake, it has to stay a while, like you don't drink it right away. And it has to like go through like a year or something, not really sure. And I don't like sake, so I never cared about it. 1 second. And this isn't sake. So when you make sake, you put it in a sort of jug or jar or something. And it has a small opening or somewhat small opening. You put cork, probably, a cork on the opening of this jug. And over that, you cover it with paper. And then it is tied up with mizuhiki again, the paper cord. The reason why this is interesting is if you want to make this look nice, if you want to make this shape with this paper look not as garbage, you need to make these folds that would make this shape start to look like Ocho on the Mecha. And that's the reason why I think this originated in Japan. Because this is all part of Japanese tradition. This is another print of Japanese Ocho and Mecha ceremony. And I don't know the date of this print, but there is an easy way to tell when this print was made. And you can see that just by looking at the color. If there is blue on the print, it was made after 1780. Because all the blue made before 1780 was of a lower quality, and it degraded and is today no longer blue. This was printed by using Prussian blue. They got it via Korea and China and so on. And this is the Prussian blue, and it stayed blue. In here you can see enlarged this Ocha or Mecha butterfly on this teapot, I would say. But here you can also see the Shimenawa, and you can see the Shide. I didn't mention when talking about the Shide, but what you saw, that zigzag Shide, is the style of Yoshida style of Shide, and it has 3 different styles. It can be zigzagged, it can be anyway, it has other styles, but this zigzag is the most used today. Here you can see another style of this Shide. Not very well, but there it is. So in Japan, there are several books, and these are not all the books that mention origami in some way. So the first published is the Ona Chohoki in 1692. It was written by a woman, and it is a sort of book for women. It sort of tells you how to decorate a house, how to make a bed, where to put things, a sort of guide for very young and very inexperienced women about, I don't know, life, something. One of the things, and I think maybe I have, okay, so one of the things that Ona Chohoki book mentions is the Noshi and Ocha and Mecha. I think 2 or maybe even more publications. The first publication is from 1692. And I'm not going to show you that because I saw how that 1692 print looks like. And I'm going to show you the print made in 1847, because the 1847 print was made by Katsuhika Oi, who was the daughter of Katsuhika Hokusai, the one great Hokusai, the one who made the great wave of Fujiwara, I think. The greatest, I think maybe the greatest Japanese printmaker. His daughter also was a printmaker and exceptionally good printmaker, painter, and she drew the drawings for the 1847 print. And this is her work. you can't compare it to the 1692 print, but trust me, this one is far better drawn. And in this drawing, you can see them using the object. I can't explain how is used, but I think this is a teapot, and this is an ocho or mecho, and this is obviously a wedding ceremony because this looks like a wedding ceremony. So this is on a choki, and this is another drawing from the same book by the same drawer, or the Katsuhika Oi. And again, this object, which I'm really going to have to research much better next time. But this is Ocho and Mecho decorating the teapots with sake. The second book is Tsutsumi Noki from 1764. It was, wait. It was written in 1764 by Sadatake Ise. We mentioned it before. It is a book of etiquette. It explains how to behave in various situations or ceremonies or things. And one of the things he mentions is the 13 ways of folding the noshi. And we're not going to go into that because who cares about noshi? Come on. The third book, I think, maybe is, of course, our favorite, the best of the best, Shembazuru Orikata. Shembazuru Orikata, written in 1797, mentioned or explains 49 ways of folding cranes in these sort of groups where they would actually be folded from one paper but using cuts. I don't think I need to explain this in any more detail. So these here lines would be the cuts, and then you have a square from which you can make a crane, and we all know how to make a crane. And this picture here is my own. It is from the Origami Museum in Kaga. So this is, I think we're talking about the same. So I think this is the design, and this is how it looks when folded. I think I put this as well because this is taken from the museum in Kaga, but this is the only one from the Shembazuru Orikata that I tried to fold and actually did, but I can't show you that one because I probably threw it away. And this is probably, to me, maybe the favorite part of origami publications in Edo period. This is the same year as the Shembazuru Orikata, so it would be 1797. It's not a book. It's called Chusingura Orikata. And Chusingura, so you don't see this, you see this clearly, like there is a name for this, right? You can see this name. Well, I can't because I have something else here. Anyway.
Oh, we can see it.
You can see the name.
Yeah.
Okay. So Chusingura Orika, Chusingura is the popular name, and the event is also called the Ako accident, or no, or Ako event, or Ako vendetta. It is a story from Japanese history. It is apparently true event, the historical event, in which it is happening in 1701 and 1702, and I think in the December of 1702 is the end of this event. So there was this daimyo, and daimyo is the feudal lord. The daimyo was the Asano Nagamori. Wait, Nagamori. I think I'm pronouncing it fairly approximately. And he was ordered to commit seppuku because he offended another court dignitary. And he did it. He committed suicide. 47 of his samurai, or 47 of his bodyguards, at that point were no longer samurais, because a samurai has a daimyo. He has a feudal lord to whom he's responsible to. But a samurai without a lord is called a rohin or ronin. And 47 of these ronin started to plan a vendetta or avenge the this murder-ish event of their samurai lord. And they decided to kill the man who ordered his seppuku. Long story short, they did it. They surrendered, and they were also ordered to commit seppuku. They did, and they did it in December of 1702. However, this entire event was so important, or so kind of important for the Japanese, that soon after they started to immortalize it in a plays in various ways. And so, for example, you have several movies about this event. I'm not sure which one is the first, but I saw the one in made in 1950s, and last I heard was the one from 2010. Anyway, in 1790s, there was a play about this event, about this 47 ronin, and someone had an idea to make a leaflet, and it is a commercial, not advertising leaflet, advertising this play, and this is it. It is a leaflet which tells you about this story in figures made with origami. It it is literally printed in two. It's like you have one leaf, and it's printed on one side and on the other side. And the thing is, it is exceptionally important, not only for origami history, but think about it. It is a play, and long after play was no longer performed, you had this leaflet which was being circulated. But not only is it being circulated, it is being reprinted. There are many reprints of the commercial for a play that is far gone, no longer performed. That is this leaflet from 1797. I think maybe I have one more. So this is, I think this is still it. Yes. So there were various these leaflets, and as I said, they were being reprinted about this story. That's it about this. And then finally, I think this might be the last one, is of course the famous, it's so hard to say what it is. It's Kaya Ragusa, maybe, but then it's Kandomado, maybe. So it's a huge manuscript. It was never published. It's just in a manuscript form. It was written by Katsuyuki Adachi. He collected this vast encyclopedic knowledge about all sorts of things. I don't even know what he wrote, but there are, for example, notable recipes for some meals. There are ways to do things, all sorts of things. Something like the encyclopedia, French encyclopedia, which was written by a French philosopher, not Descartes. Well, some French philosopher, French encyclopedia. It's huge. It has more than 200 volumes, this Kayaragusa thingy. And it is the newspaper in Osaka. They are the owners of the original manuscript. And Professor Frederick Starr, in 1920s, kind of, maybe before that, went to Osaka and was given permission to make a copy of the Kayaragusa, which is referring to origami. And he had it, and then with his death, he donated it to, I think, Chicago University Library or maybe somewhere else. But this is like a print, a copy, like Xerox, not a Xerox print, but a copy of it from 1920s. And then in 1960s, Julia and Martin Brosman found this copy, and I think they managed to find the original in Osaka. And so the Kannomado refers to the last part of the volume which mentions origami. Or I think that's Kayaragusa. I'm sorry. I think Kayaragusa means is on the back of the volume of which mentions origami. And in translation, it means the winter window. And it might refer to the opinion that Katsuyuki Adachi had about his writing. It might mean I'm right. It might mean I'm writing all this, but at the end, all this is going to end up being is the filler for the draft of the windows during winter, as in people are going to use this paper to fill the holes in the windows so they don't have a draft through the house. As I said, it mentions 49 pieces of origami, and most of them, as you can see in the dragonfly on the screen, most of them use cuts. Either at the beginning or during the folding, they use cuts. In fact, only of those 49, only 6 models don't use any cuts. Those are, he mentions Ocho and Mecho. He mentions cicada, an iris, a snail, and a frog, the one that is blown up, or not blown up, but filled up or blown into, maybe. But what is more important in this work, he mentions the word oricata. He mentions that oricata is pastime for children, meaning that in 1840s or at that time, oricata was already known to children and it was being practiced regularly by children. And also, he mentions Shembazuru oricata. He's not doing anything with cranes because there is already Shembazuru oricata that went through that before him. And he mentions models such as a ship, flower, a lotus flower, a sandal, a box, samurai helmet. And he mentions them, but he says, I'm not going to go into that because these models are so well known and it's not, I don't need to mention them because everybody knows how to make them. Whereas it is supposed that the models such as a frog or an iris, he thought were models more interesting or more rarer to find, and that's why he mentioned them in his manuscript. So part of Kairagusa is, I think, 11 figures, which for which you have this complex. It's not a complex diagram, but it's, for example, I think maybe this. No. So you have diagrams for these human figures, but you also have designs in which you have a face. I'm not sure if this is it, but you have a full face, like hands, drawn on the diagram for these models. And there are 11 of such figures. Well, there. This is also, I'm not sure if this is mine or found from internet, but these are from the Cairo. So I'm talking about these. This would be drawn on the paper before folding, and this would be how it ended up. You're supposed to fold it based on these Japanese signs. I think these are numbers, so this might help. And this would be explanation for making it into this. Good luck. This is Ranma Zushiki. So, Hayato Ohoka printed a book. And this is a book of various designs that you can draw on sliding doors. On sliding doors, you have a sliding door and you want to decorate it, and he printed a book with the designs you can use. One of these designs in this, by the way, it's a 3-volume book. It's not that much. It's not like 300 drawings. I don't know the number, but one of those drawings refers to origami. It is printed in 1734, and it mentions the boat, it mentions the crane, it mentions the help me out. What is this? Tatomna? No. Anyway, you know what this is.
Tamatewako, Tamatewako.
Tamatewako, yes. This also has a Japanese name, but it's that box with the with that, and it's mentioned twice. This this cube is also mentioned twice, as is the crane and the boat, and this also has a name. Oh my god. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
Sambo.
Yes,
Sambo.
Sambo. This is it. This is that. When I was making this presentation in 2019, I wanted to make a comparison with the Japanese origami and the European origami. And maybe more because I wanted to sort of make a point to the people that would be listening to it then. I don't think I had that opinion even then, but there is this thought. Because origami rules today are very, very strict and are like strictly defined. One piece of paper, look, this is in Croatian. I didn't change it. So the regular form of paper, usually a square. There can't be any cuts. There is no glue and no drawing on origami. And if you go one by one, all of these rules are broken in the Japanese origami that we have seen so far. So we saw there is drawing on origami, well, glue or no glue, but there are lots of cuts. Usually the paper is cut out into an irregular form, and the one piece rule does not apply in Japanese origami. It is a thought that maybe the rules of origami today did not originate in Japan, but were brought to Japan from Europe. Because paper folding in Europe also has a tradition. And this tradition dates, actually, you could say, before any evidence for Japanese origami. The first mention of Japanese origami was in Iharo Saikaku in 1680s. So that's 1680s. Whereas the Book of Hours of Catherine of Cleves mentions origami, and it mentions it in 1440. That's 1400s. So this is not a small book. It's not a small thing. This is the best of the best books of Dutch manuscripts. This is the prettiest, the best manuscript made by the Dutch. It is intricately drawn. It holds more than 150 miniature paintings. It is drawn on the most expensive vellum, the best quality vellum. It is painted by the best pigments. You can see a lot of blue, and you can see it has gold leaf. There is a name for it when you apply gold to paper. Anyway, can't remember it. It was, I'm not gonna go into a lot of details, but was about to get married. And I think she married in 1430s. And in 1430s, this book was commissioned by a painter. I think her father or maybe even her husband commissioned the painting or the writing of this book. And keep in mind, it is hugely expensive. Only just the materials for this book would be like yearly wage, like maybe 100-year wage for a normal person. And it is sort of also like it is like the book we also had, the Ona Cholki. What is the name of that book? the book for the woman. This is like a guide for this young woman. It is mostly into prayers, about the prayers and that sort of thing, but it mentions a calendar, what to do, how to do things, and so on and so on. It is important. It is now kept in Pierpont Morgan Library in Netherlands. But yeah, I wanted to mention that Catherine of Cleves is known for two things. One is having her name on this book, and the other is her divorce from her husband. She had a very turbulent relationship with her husband, which is interesting, but I'm not going to go into that. And I'm going to say just that. On the page which mentions Saint Agatha, there is a box, and this is the box. It is a paper folded box, and it is, in my opinion, the first drawn European origami. We know it is an origami or paper folded because not only can we see it folded, we can see how it is folded here. It is the first sort of diagram, but it's phenomenally drawn. It is, you can fold it. Looking at it, you can see how it is folded. And you actually see these pre-creases. You can see the lines which are needed to fold it, but you also see the lines which are pre-folds, which are not used during the folding. They're just there to make the fold. Okay, I think that's it about the Catherine of Cleves. Okay. Speramundi. So, in the 11th or 12th century, sorry, the 12th century, there was this, and apparently he was the British. Let's go with a, let's say that he was British. He was called Johannes de Sacrobosco, sorry. Later, he was known as John of Hollywood. He was an astronomer, mathematician, a professor at Paris University. And he wrote a book. The book was called the Sfera Mundi. And it is the most important book on astronomy after Ptolemaios and before Copernicus. So he wrote the book in, I think, 1230. About 50 years before that, there was a first translation of Ptolemaios from Arabic into French, no, sorry, not French, Latin. And using the Ptolemaios' origin or translated from Greek into Arabic, from Arabic into Latin, using that Latin translation of Ptolemaios and using some other Arabic astronomers, he wrote his own book called Sfera Mundi. Hearing Sfera Mundi, you would think it is the sphere or the globe of the world, meaning the Earth. Whereas the Johannes Sacrobosco says or explains in his book that it is actually, he means the final sphere, the sphere of the stars. That's not important. What is interesting is that he wrote it in 13th century, so 1230. For 200 years, this book is read on all the universities around the world, or sorry, around Europe, and it is being copied by hand. And today we have these hand-copied copies of this book. That is all not important. What is important is in 1472, there is a printing of this Sfera Mundi book. So Johannes Sacrobosco is long dead. He lived till approximately 1256. It is not well known when he died. But in 1472, in Ferrara, his book is printed for the first time. In the next 200 years, it's going to be printed. It's going to have 86 editions. And from 1472, from the first edition to 1720, it had more than 300 printings, 300 editions, all of which are not important. In 1490, there is an edition printed in Venice. And in one of the diagrams of this book, there is a drawing of a paper boat. What you will notice is this line here, because this could look like a boat, but this is a triangle, and this line here is obviously a paper fold. It makes sense. It's a bad drawing, but it makes sense only if you already know how a paper boat looks like. If you haven't seen a paper boat before, then this will look like, what is this? But if you know what is a paper boat, if you have seen it before, you're going to recognize this as a paper or as a boat on the waves. So this is also fairly early. And now in 1614, John Webster published, or probably not published, but performed a play, Duchess of Malfi. Keep in mind, 1640 is contemporary with Shakespeare. And Duchess of Malfi is not a trivial play. It is a play that is still performed today. I saw the performance from, in fact, the Shakespeare's Globe Company, or Globe Theatre, sorry. So in the Duchess of Malfi, in this play, one character, Bossola, is referring to his status in life and in society and so on. And he says, our bodies are weaker than these weaker than those paper prisons boys use to keep flies in. It is supposed, or it is being said, that it is talking about the water bomb, right? Or the cube. There are different names for it. It might be, but certainly there is a paper shape that has been used for play by boys. And I saw that Salas is here, so I'm not going to go a lot into details about this. But in 1639, Mattia Giger wrote this. This is also one of the books written for kind of women, maybe.
That's the second edition. The first was 1629.
Ah, thank you. But then, okay, this was the one I could find on the internet, so we're using this one. Anyway, this is a book which mentions a lot of things. Also, I think it's mostly about etiquette, how to serve things, how to do things around the house, mostly. In 2 pages of this book, there is this fairly intricate way of shaping cloth, or what's the English word for ubrus?
Napkins.
Napkins. Thank you. So the shaping of napkins, and you have this, and you have this, and you of course have the Salas's interpretation of all of these. I'm going to show this, of course. Now, it should be said that we don't really know how this actually looked like, because these are very, very, very bad drawings. I'm thinking that this is far better than they would have achieved. But, you know, I'm not going to go into that. I don't know how it looked like, but there it is. And actually, I'm thinking I'm going to end it here, because the rest is mostly European designs. However, I'm going to finally repeat the origami rules. Keep in mind that if you consider the origami rules today, one piece of paper, no cutting, and so on and so on, it would make more sense to use those rules if you use a napkin, which you have to reuse next time. Then if you use a piece of paper, like in Japan, they would use this piece of paper, they would cut it, they would do whatever with it, because it's just a piece of paper. You can, you do it and that's it. Whereas if you do it with napkins, it makes much more sense to use these strict rules: no cutting, one piece, no drawing on it because it's a napkin. I'm thinking that would be it. I had well, it wasn't a discussion, but Andrei Hachuyev mentioned, I'm going to finish with this. He mentioned last time we had a meeting, or at some point, he mentioned kirikomi origami. Well, apparently, there is this name. So you have origami, which is strictly origami with no cuts, no gluing, no nothing. Then you have kirigami, which has cuts. And then you have, in the middle of that, kirikomi origami, which is origami which uses cuts. And apparently, Japanese folders invented the name, and I don't know. I think that kirigami was invented by Vivian Oppenheimer, or and she used it in her book Paper Toys. for the first time, and that's like, I think, 1960s. And then apparently after that, someone thought that we needed another word to denote something in between those two. Well, I'm thinking that's it. I'm open for questions. Oof.
Hi, Kreshimir.
Yes.
Puno hwala.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
1 second. Did I stop sharing the screen?
I stopped your sharing, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's not easy to make what you make. No? The history of folding is not written, and to speak about it is always dangerous and always difficult. A lot of mistakes to correct in the future, a lot of witnesses that don't appear, but you suppose. It's very, very good that you today was here explaining something about this history. It's very easy to speak about one subject, very concrete subject perhaps, but about all the whole history, I think it's really complicated. No? Then we have to say, all the people that you listen to you, thank you very much. Really, you make a big effort to explain that. But I have a lot of questions, of course. Oh, my video. Sorry. I have a lot of questions, but I don't will ask all the questions. But one question, because at the beginning the title of the conference was the folding in Japan. No? And then one thing that I think is it's very strange. No? We have all the history explained. The paper arrived from China to Japan in 6th century. But we have to wait more than 1,000 years later that appear something clear origami, something not perhaps could be, should be, we think, we don't think. No, that really something more than 1,000 years. The question is, if you have one explanation about this mystery, if you think they didn't receive it more influence from China, for example, or is perhaps the relation with Europe in the 16th century, the folding art explodes. It's really an incredible explosion of folding art. And curiously, more or less a little later, then in Japan start to appear such documents that you show us. Have some relation that we don't know. There is a bridge through both traditions that one start the other and the other perhaps is in contact with one. Is that one explanation, or you have another explanation, or simply you don't have explanation for this more than 1,000 years without witness? We have in China, for example, the first kirigami was in China in the 5th century after Christus, no? And we have the paper folded, no? They're in Turpan, no? In some tombs, no? And we know that, no? But such documents doesn't appear in Japan during these 1,000 years that we know. They know how to make paper, but perhaps one poem, perhaps one mention, but no one concrete witness. Please.
If I may, your question is how I would explain, or how I would explain this happening of paper folding in Europe and then paper folding in Japan, or did I misunderstand?
No, the question is, how can you explain yourself why in Japan they know the paper in the 6th
Ah,
century,
for 1,000 years.
and 1,000 years later appear something.
Well, I read a few books about paper making, not paper making, but paper, the history of paper making. And the thing with paper is, it's really exceptionally interesting thing and hard to imagine. I mean, you have papyrus, what's English? How do you pronounce it in English? Papyrus.
Yes,
Papyrus in Egypt, and then nothing. Then you have parchment in Greek Pergamon, and then nothing. Like Europe never developed anything like it. There is no material in Europe except wood to write on. You have paper in China, and the only place you also have paper is in South America. They are actually making real paper in a very, very specific way, which is very strongly referring to Chinese way of paper making, and that is kind of not typical. You know, you're not something you would expect, especially since in paper making, Europe produced paper from rags from, I think, 12th or even before. Arabs did it before 12th century, but way to 19th century before we discovered a way to make paper out of wood. So you have this enormous period of time in which you have people going from village to village collecting rags to make paper from. And it was hard for Europeans to make a material, to imagine making paper. I have no explanation for this, but I'm open, as I said at the beginning when I talked about China, there is no evidence that paper folding was happening in China. And I can't read the Chinese poem that you sent on a chat. 1 second. Actually, if you can go to the Salas's poem on Chinese, if you look at the so you have this last line, not the last, but the one before last. I'm going to send it into chat when I find how to do it. Okay, so in this line in the chat, you have these two characters. I can't read Chinese, but I can read this. These two characters mean to paint on paper. It doesn't mean to fold. The first two, so the sentence begins, my old wife painted or draw on paper. There is no folding. Like I would have, I mean, I'm not a expert for Chinese, but this I can understand. So maybe there is something more in the poem which would refer to folding. No, but as this stands now, if this is the poem that is being talked about, and it is because later in the sentence the chessboard is being mentioned, so I have no doubt that this is the poem, but there is no evidence that this is being folded as what we would think of folding. It might be as I said, that she folded it and then drew, but that is
Can
not in the poem.
Perhaps to comment something to this poem, there are 4 lines in the poem.
Yes, yes.
The question is the third line and the third character.
Yes,
Third
yeah.
line, third character.
Yes, yes.
This character in Chinese is hua.
Yes.
Hua.
Hua.
And hua was translated as drawing, but the meaning of hua at that time it can be interpreted as making the lines. Making the lines.
Okay.
Then there is the possibility that could be drawing, and there is the possibility that could be folding. For this reason, perhaps someone translation they give the word folding, other give the drawing, because at that time it means making the lines. And how you make the lines? You can draw, you can fold. Normally, this game was made in a paper, no? And this paper was played in this game in this place, in the other place, and was transported perhaps, no? And can be that they make the field of the game at the same time that they decide to play, because it's with stones, with little stones. They don't go to a shop to buy this toy. They make and it's could be the possibility in the meaning of hua that is. And what you say, there is no witness in China. I repeat, in Turpan, in the west of China, there are 5-6 tombs where from 5th and 6th, at the end of the 5th and at the beginning of the 6th century, not 16 and 15, 5th century and 6th century. What is the paper? That the paper itself was folded for other goals. But it was paper and folded, and that's something that we have to correct when we say in China there is no witness. The oldest witness that we know until today is that. Perhaps tomorrow appear something more somewhere. But that's a very important thing to know. Another interesting thing, would you comment? No, you speak about the Arabs. The Arabs came, take the secret of the paper making and bring to Europe. But it's curious that many folks in the Pacific area, it means from China, Bering, and including Hawaii, Aztecas, Incas, these people in this region, such people may produce a kind of paper.
Proto paper, yes.
Perhaps not so nice, not so fine as the Chinese, as the Japanese.
Yes.
But perhaps we forgot that in the same way that the Chinese influence to Europe, or the Japan influence, the Asiatic influence to Europe, could be the same influence in the other direction through the Pacific Ocean. It's only a supposition, no?
The connection between South America and China has already been put into question, because several of, I think not several, but many Egyptian mummies hold the cocaine alkaloids. And coke grows only in South America. There are several anthropological distinguished connections between China and South America. For example, in Mayan script, you have a character for a door, and this door resembles the Chinese character for door. However, when you go through etymology for Chinese character, it looks like an ancient door which they used, whereas the Mayans never had such a door. So there is that. There are many such examples, and paper and the production of paper would be one of them, because it is very, very similar to the paper production of China. The
Kreshimir,
various...
before you go too deep into that, maybe people have more questions because the time is up and we have about
with
just
origami,
a few minutes,
yes.
and you are.
Good said. Good said.
Okay, so Juan and Kreshimir, I kind of want to suggest something about what happens in the 15th century. The most clear thing that happens in the 15th century is the invention of printing press, and try to think what that means. That means all of a sudden, very, very quickly across all of Europe, you have standardized equipment, paper starting to come in and be made in consistent amounts. Paper becomes available, it becomes cheap, it becomes standard. In the process of making books, you fold the paper first, you fold the paper up into a small package, and then you print, you print on one big sheet, and then you fold it up, and then you cut it. You have people starting to write letters to each other in much, much greater amounts, and they're taking their paper and they're folding it up into a shape that they can send it secretly. That already, those are enormous changes in the way people are reacting to paper. May have existed 1,000 years before, but all of a sudden it's now a new material and newly available. I think this has a very big effect on how people start to think about folding and paper together. Exactly at that time, at the end of the 15th century, and from then on. And I am inclined to agree that it goes from Europe to Japan somehow or other, rather than being developed in parallel somehow secretly. That's my thought.
About the printing, Gutenberg printed his Bible in, I think, 1450 or 1454, and but Japanese had printing before that. They were printing on wood blocks, and they kept printing on wood blocks even after the
single sheet. So you have a single block on a sheet, and you don't fold it afterwards. The folding of the papers into books, if I'm not, I might be mistaken about this, but so far as I know, the Japanese are printing one image on one sheet, and you don't fold the paper afterwards and cut it like into a book, right? I might be wrong about this. Historians here can correct me. In the way it was done in Europe, you print a very, very large sheet. You position the pages the way that they're supposed to be. It's called what's it called? I forget what the name is.
I think you might be wrong on this, but I'm not gonna correct you because I can't really. But I think they did have books, and in fact, I think they did print on only one side, but they would fold it in zigzag, so you would be going through like a double sheet of paper.
In Japan.
Yeah.
And in China.
I want to jump in and say, I don't know about books, but I know that they had folding fans in Japan and China that were made of paper in the 12th century, I believe. And there are still some surviving ones from around that time period that are in museums. So definitely they did have paper that was capable of being folded, and they did fold it.
Yeah, it was capable of being folded, but still 12th century fan, it's still proto origami. It's not origami, it's pre-origami. Like at the moment when you get something that represents something else, something like I mean, to fold a letter, you could say this is interesting, but I wouldn't call it origami. Like folding an envelope or even an oshi, to me is not.
Kreshimir, you got very excited when you showed the picture of a box. I don't see that a box is so different from an envelope. It is an envelope, really, right?
True. Yeah, but and absolutely, I wouldn't call the box from the Hours of Catherine of Cleves an origami, but I would call it pre-origami. But it was a notion. There was something there.
Every tree is a pre-origami, if you think about it.
One other thing I wanted to mention before origami, there was an art of leaf folding. There are other things to be folded. I'm talking about leaf folding in Polynesian countries, in Vietnam, Korea, Thailand, and so on and so on. And I didn't mention, because I didn't go into paper making at all, in this same region, today, that region, there is the still tradition of making tapas, and tapas is the proto-paper, the pre-paper, the bark of a certain tree, which is being
Pounded.
Something, and then it is not spread, but it sort of spreads itself like in a thinner sheet, and it can be drawn upon. It can even be cut into a wardrobe and so on.
Well, I must say, it's hard to believe how much you know, and when did you have the time to gain so much knowledge about this stuff? And this is highly impressive, and I've learned so much today. I never saw most of the thing that you bought. I never saw it before, and your ability to look on those characters and say the names, like, unbelievable.
How do you know he's doing it right?
Yeah. Thank you, Sadia.
Yeah. So anyway, this was great.
Actually, how do you know any of this is correct?
We believe you. We believe you. And John Sala said that most of it is correct. So
I say
okay,
about
guys,
China,
thank you so much. I'll stop recording.